Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared. My lovely wife Kara's at work, and today we are checking out the .75 AR by Strider. At the end of this video, I will hone this edge really quick. I feel like people might be able to get something out of it. Hopefully they can. So if you want to check that out at the very end, it'll be very quick. So the total length on this knife is 8 inches with a 3¼ inch blade. This knife was made by Medford. I'll talk a little bit about that here in a moment, but it is a Strider design. It is S35 VN Tanto blade, American Tanto, with a hollow grind here and another hollow grind up here, but it gets thicker. You can see the two edges, single edge here and double edge there, and it's got kind of a drop point Tanto, almost like a drop point American Tanto. Titanium clip, very hard use. You can see the strength in it, and then the stop pins are right here. Now when I first got this thing was very, very stiff. And by the way, this was borrowed to me by the Shadow Man, and thank you to him. He knows who he is. But when I first got this thing, man, it was like brand new. I mean, literally brand new. This thing was very stiff. So I wanted to use it, hang on to it, and break it in. I felt like that was very important to see the process on breaking it in, how fast it would break in. And it broke in really fast considering, like the time I've had it. I've had it probably a couple weeks now. And I've carried it probably about a week straight, off and on. I carried it about 3 or 4 days and then off and on for a couple days. And then, partial some days. But I used it. I'm not sure if I still have the clip of me using it. I did record me breaking down some boxes, but I might have deleted it. If not, I will explain that when I get to the ergos. Let's finish talking about the blade. So this gets very thin behind the edge, about 15 thousandths behind the edge right here, which is very thin, especially for a blade stock as thick as this. You know what? Let's do some size comparisons really quick, and then I'll show the thickness of the blade. So here it is next to the Benchmade Griptilian. They're about the same exact length. Here it is next to Medford Genesis, Praetorian Genesis, right around the same length as well. Here it is next to the Strider. Strider. Next to the Shaman, about the same length as well. It's a great EDC length. Like a perfect EDC length. Here it is next to the SMF Strider. This one is a bit bigger, as you can see. And then I got an SNG too. It is definitely closer to the SNG. And then, here's the Benchmade 940, which is a little bit smaller, not by much. But I think that's probably good enough size comparisons. You guys get the point. So the blade stock thickness, let's look at it next to the Shaman. You can see how thick the blade stock is. It is a very thick blade stock. You could definitely get a lot of work done with this. Here it is next to the SMF. They're about the same thickness. Oh, you know what? Actually, yeah, they're about the same thickness. Now, so we got a very thick blade stock. Here's the Hinder XM24. But yeah, thick blade stock, but it gets down to such a nice thin blade. Now, it does get thicker up here. What did I measure this at? So directly in the middle is 20 thousandths right here, but let me just say that it gets thick quick. So that's literally directly over the edge. Right behind the edge is 20, but right behind that, it gets a lot thicker very quick. So it is definitely thick up here, but then this deep hollow grind is nice and thin, and it stays thin up the blade. The ergos are amazing. This thing does have very, very good ergos. The clip, you hardly feel it in the hand. And then you got this nice big choil area. The jimping, aggressive jimping, very aggressive jimping. It definitely works because it's very aggressive. But you got good grip, especially for the push cuts. And back here, I got a good grip. Also, nice solid grip. There's no weight relieving, so it's a very solid, heavy weight. Now, cutting with it, the tip is easy to get to, and the tip works very well. So, like, if you have something laid down and you do a utility cut, this tip works fantastic. And then you also can use this tip, you know, if you are opening packages or whatever. Maybe if you don't need such an aggressive cutter, you know, because this tip almost acts like a claw. Like, it's really good to use. Now, slicing with it, it worked pretty good. There were times when it bound up a little bit. Now, if I kept it right here in this area, I could do pretty good push cuts. But, you know, this is a pretty thick blade stock, so it wasn't the best slicer. You know, I did have times where I had to really muscle it through. It's not going to be your champion slicer. Now, when you're using the tip for utility cuts, that is really nice. Worked out really good, just the way this hollow grind is and how thick the tip is, and then you don't have to worry about really breaking this tip. It's got a nice strong tip, and I could see light prying being okay with this. Now this has an aggressive Tanto, so it's not really like this one, which would be maybe a little bit more suitable for that, seeing as, you know, the position of the Tanto compared to this one. Now, it does have a, you see the detent ball? You can see it, it's back in there. I don't know if you can see it. It does not have a lock bar insert, but it does have a stabilizer, which helps you not to over travel the lock bar or bend it in any way. Let's get to the action. Now, I did not take this thing apart at all. I just broke it in by opening and closing it. At first, I couldn't really get the Spidey flick done without, you know, flicking my wrist really hard. Same thing with the thumb flick. I couldn't really do that at first. Now, this thing is super smooth. I mean, you still have to have some muscle to flick it, but obviously, it's pretty simple. And then the drop is pretty nice. Now, you can also slow roll it. At first, I had to pinch it out. I had to pinch it and then roll it. Now, as long as my finger's not on the lock bar, I can easily pop it out. So you just want to make sure you're not touching that lock bar, because when you touch that lock bar, you're locking it closed. So you can slow roll it out. And then I kind of carry it with the stop pin when I do it. But yeah, I did notice that a lot of times when I was unlocking it, because this is a strong lock bar, sometimes I turn it around like this, and I can use my 2 fingers, which this is a nice big slot for, and I just pull it like that and then push forward, and it works really good. This is a hard use knife. I guess, you know, it could be considered an EDC knife, but, you know, it is going to be on the harder use of things, or just somebody, you know, who wants a knife that could be used hard use if they need it to, and also just do, you know, basic EDC. Love the grind lines. Look at that. That is beautiful grind lines. Very nice. I love the stone washed flats mixed with the satin belt finish. I think that looks beautiful. Nice taper down to the tip. The build quality, you can see just how everything is built so strong. Nice big hardware, stone washed titanium, so you don't have to worry about scratches really, because, you know, it's already got that scratched finish. Stone washed clip. It's like everything is made for use on this thing, which I like. I like that. that look. Now, the dislikes about it. So there are a few. Oh, but first, let me just talk about this clip really quick. Carrying it in and out of the pocket, it carried just fine. I had no issue taking it in and out of the pocket. It doesn't carry the deepest, but it's just fine. And you know you have a knife in your pocket. Obviously, it does have a pretty big platform here. You know, look at the shaman. You know, it's a bit bigger than that in the pocket. So you know and it's heavy. So you know you got a knife in your pocket, but it's not a big deal to carry. At least it wasn't for me. Now the bad things. So one bad thing is that this lock bar it's got a lot of strength. Now I like that in some senses because I know it's a strong lockup. I know it's locked up nice and strong. I don't have to worry about it coming disengaged or anything like that. And I have constant pressure pushing, locking it up stronger. And the geometry of the lock is really good too. Like when I put pressure on it, you see it doesn't even move. And then zero lock stick whatsoever. The lock geometry is very nice, but the lock bar, man, it's got some strong pressure. So you gotta get used to it with your thumb. Your thumb almost needs to build a callus because this is it's kind of sharp right there. It's not the most comfortable thing to unlock. Now at first, when you first unlock it, you're like, oh, that's not bad. You know, especially when you get it right down in here, you know, like where you kind of get more of your thumb in there. You're like, that's not that bad. But if you keep doing it, it's going to start hurting your thumb. So that's why, if you notice, a lot of people that have Medfords, they turn it and they close it like that. You know, after the lock bar really breaks in, it's not a big deal. And I know you do want to get your thumb used to it. But what I do is I just flip between opening and closing it like that and doing it with my thumb. So then I don't wear my thumb out and I can continue to open and close it without it really hurting my thumb. And then I don't have to just do one finger here because of the big gap. I can actually use two fingers, which really gives you a lot of leverage, and it's really easy to unlock. But you can easily still do it with your thumb, but it does get a little sharp after a while. Now the next thing, right, I don't know if this will come up. Also, this is where it stops. You see that right there? That's where it stops against the stop pin. Because this is the closing stop pin, not the open stop pin. That's right here. That's these pins. But that's the closing stop pin. It's right there, which really isn't that big of a deal. But, you know, the more you sharpen it back, you're going to want to be aware of that. You don't want to sharpen past that point. And if you do, once you do get to that point, you're going to want to sharpen up the blade and not keep sharpening back, you know, all the way back to here. Now, another thing, it instantly gets, not really. You kind of feel like right here where it gets thicker, but it's kind of up the blade a little bit. You can see how it tapers right here. Now, in here, it's a little bit thinner, but right back here in the choil, it's thicker. So, eventually, it'll probably get a little bit thicker of a bevel when you sharpen it. Like, it'll stay nice and thin, meaning the edge bevel will stay nice and thin for a while, but eventually it's going to create a little bit of a smile going up the blade. That's after a long time though. Now, the next thing, and this is not really that big of a deal, but you know, when they dropped this, they didn't say that it was from Medford at first. I don't know. I don't think they were really trying to hide it, but I don't know. I have no idea. But that was some controversy because people wanted to, or would have rathered them just disclose that, you know, it was being made in the Medford factory and not by Strider. Even though it's a Strider design, Medford produced it, or Medford made it. So I know a lot of people did not like that, and a lot of people were very upset. I mean, like, really mad. Some people sold theirs immediately. It's just a thing. Some, you know, like, sometimes there's certain people you don't like, and some people don't like Greg Medford. And I have no problem with them, but I'm just saying, like, some people do. So, you know, if you're that person, it might not be something you might want to get. Now, all the information's out there, but at the beginning, when it first dropped, that was a thing. Next thing is the jimping. Let's see if we can get it to come up. This jimping is very sharp. I mean, it is sharp. So it's a little bit more comfortable than the Praetorian Genesis, but not by much. It is definitely more comfortable than this one. This one's, look at how aggressive that is. I mean, that's just ridiculous jimping. Gloves or no gloves. You don't wear gloves the majority of the time when you use your knife. And you're not going to use your gloves the majority of the time using this knife. I mean, you're going to use your hands. If you have to bear down on this right there, it's not nice, especially after a long time. So it's very aggressive jimping. I would say too aggressive. But all in all, I do like the knife, and the hole isn't really chamfered, which in my opinion, I don't mind. I kind of like it to not be chamfered. I know it does take your skin a little bit with this edge, but I like that because it gives me a good grip when I flick it. So, but all in all, I do like the knife. I think it's an awesome knife. I think it's fantastic in the hand, you know, aside from the jimping. It's still pretty good. It fits good in my hand. It feels a little short when you're back here, like it's almost too short. So I feel like I need to use this choil area, but you can get like a finger and a half right there, and you kind of round this area right there. It is flat and then just chamfered edges, so there's no contouring, but it still feels nice in the hand. I mean, I enjoy it in the hand. Now, cutting with it wasn't the best. Like I said, the tip worked really good, but push cuts, not so good. Push cuts were a bit not so. And while I continue talking about this, I'll do my honing. So, yeah, it didn't cut the best. I didn't enjoy the cutting performance so much, at least for like the push cuts. Now, the edge, or the tip, sorry, the tip worked just fine. But the edge doing push cuts, not so much. And for a hard use knife, you know, I know it's hard use, so it's supposed to be a little stronger. I understand that. But I feel like a good hard use knife should pass through materials, you know, good. And I didn't do anything with wood or anything like that. At least nothing to really talk about. So it's hard for me to say that, oh, well, it works really good with wood, so maybe that's what it was for, because I'm looking at more of like a hard use EDC, which I'm not saying you wouldn't use it on stuff like that. I just didn't. But I still think it's a fantastic knife. It's just not going to be the knife that you're going to grab when you got to cut up all your recycling. It's going to be the knife you take out of your pocket to do your one cut. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4 cuts really quick, and then put it back in your pocket. Now, for hard use tasks, yeah, it's a brute of a knife, so it's going to be able to do hard use tasks, but you're going to have a little bit of an issue with it passing through materials, especially with the blade shape, because you don't have a big area for it to slice. And using this top portion, this definitely doesn't go through materials good, so you almost got to use this portion right there to go through materials. Up here, this is basically only going to be for those type of cuts, you know, just utility cuts, because this does not pass through for anything. It's just too thick, you know. Even though it is hollowed, it's just such a thick hollow. I think they could have definitely gave you better blade geometry up here in the front. I don't think they needed to go that thick. But all in all, I mean, it's a well-built, badass knife. But it's just not going to be your champion slicer, or user for that matter. But hey, it's one thing though, it won't break on you. It's not going to break on you. It's going to be able to hold up to long-term use, and it does have a nice strong blade. Let's test this edge out really quick. I know I still have to strop it. Now, it would not cut this receipt before. Oh, that's way better. A little wet. Yeah, that's way better. Check this front part. Yeah, way better. I don't expect this front part to do that good at cutting. It's just, you know, pretty thick, but it still cuts really good. But now, like for cuts like this, very nice. I mean, even for that part. I wasn't trying to cut my thing, my pad, so I didn't push hard. I just barely drug it across. But yeah, great knife. I do like it a lot. I'm glad I got to check it out because it caught my eye the first time I seen it, and I'm glad to send it back nice and broken in, nice and smooth. It didn't stay centered. There's one thing. It's almost centered, but see, with Medford's, look how tight it is. It's not rubbing whatsoever. And for Medford, that's a big gap in between the knife and, I know it looks like it's almost close to rubbing, but Medford has such tight tolerances that that's actually a big distance away from the blade. You can even see on the other side how tight it still is. It's almost centered, but not quite. And I'm not going to mess with the pivot because you're supposed to let these things break in naturally. And that's what I'm doing, and it has. And it's super smooth now, so I enjoyed getting to break this thing in. Alright guys, thanks for joining me. I'm going to go strap this thing. Peace.